Kuja Dosha. Right. Kuja Dosha and Sade Sati, I think of them together as a pair because they both are like crazes, astrological crazes, fads, fashions that have come out of fairly reasonably contemporary India. People become obsessed with something. So over the past centuries, people have been obsessed with these two things, almost equally obsessed with Sade Sati and Kuja Dosha. Kuja Dosha has a few synonyms. Sometimes it's called Kuja Dosha, sometimes it's called Mangala Dosha, sometimes it's called, what else? Mangleek? Mangleeka? Mangal and Kuja are two names for Mars. So it's just something about Mars. Mangleek means that you're Martian. And Mangala Dosha means that you have a problem with Mars. Dosha means a problem. Or Kuja Dosha means Mars problem. The idea there is Mars is a bachelor. And all the symbolism of Mars is Mars goes retrograde very strangely. Mars has the most erratic retrogression pattern. And when it goes retrograde, it goes into a big retrogression. It does a big, like other planets will retrograde a little bit back and then go back to their normal thing, but Mars goes wild. So that's how Mars got the character of being called a bachelor. And also it's red. It's a red star. So it's from the red star, it's got this character of being passionate and a little bit aggressive. This redness. And then it's going wherever it wants. It's unpredictable where it goes. So it's more, the nature of Mars is really independent, masculine. So out of all the gods of planets, everybody's married, but not Mars. He's the only one who's a bachelor. So Mars symbolizes freedom, independence, self-reliance, those kind of things. Self-decisiveness, self-direction. That's wonderful. All that stuff is wonderful. Everybody wants to have freedom. Everybody wants to be independent. Everybody wants to be self-reliant and all that stuff. So Mars is not bad. But there's some areas in life where you don't want to be independent. Mm-hmm. Like do you want to be independent from your newborn baby? It's not really a good application of independence and freedom. That's not the right time. Mm-hmm. You just had a child. This is not the time to focus on developing your personal freedom. Right? Or you just got married. This is not the right time to be discovering yourself. Right? Now is the time for you to integrate into discovering somebody else and how you're a part of somebody else. Just got married. So there's certain areas in life where independence and self-reliance and so forth are completely unwelcome. They completely ruin the thing. Astrologically speaking, one of the key places where that stuff is unwelcome is the seventh house. The seventh house is where we're going to form partnerships with other people. So astrologically speaking, the seventh house is like all about cooperation, and Mars is all about independence. And that's what Kuja or Mangala Dosha is all about. Or if you're called Martian, Mangleek. Martian means you got too much Mars. You got it in the wrong place. Not too much Mars, really, but more accurate to say you've got Mars in the wrong spot. And that's what the Mangala Dosha is all about. If Mars somehow or another contacts the seventh house, you can predict problems for that area of life. It will be a kind of person that has a baby and wishes they were more free. A person that just gets married and feels like I need to discover myself right now. Mm-hmm. Now, think about the ways that Mars can contact the seventh house. For a classic Mangala Dosha, Mars has to be either in the seventh house or in a house where it would aspect the seventh. And then some people will add the second house, because second has to do with family also, and it's a lot like the seventh house. So if they do that, then they're going to add the eighth house too, because then Mars can aspect it from the eighth. So like you're going to get 6 out of 12 houses. If Mars is in 6 out of 12 houses, you got a Mangala Dosha, and you need to buy this ring from my friend. Or, you need to do this puja from this other friend of mine. So you got 50% of your clientele is going to go and spend money on your rings or your puja. So it's a great little trick to predict Mangala Dosha, and especially if it's a girl. If it was a Mangala Dosha for a guy, okay, so all right, so this guy's going to be a bachelor or whatever. But girls, they're all there, especially if it's a social setting where they need to get married. It's going to wreck their life. You say they're Mangala Dosha, it's going to wreck their mind. It's going to wreck everything. And they're in your palm of your hand, the astrologer's hand. You just tell them what to do so they can get free from the Mangala Dosha. When really these things are not all that bad. And the reason why you can tell that they're not all that bad is because they happen so much. They happen all, right? And 50% of the people, statistically speaking, if 6 out of 12 houses will make Mangala Dosha, then 50% of people are going to have Mangala Dosha. Mangala Dosha means you're abnormal. You're going to have a worse than the average experience. Well, how can that be when 50% of people would have that experience? So it must not be reasonable. So some people have all these rules for how, well, even though you have this Mangala Dosha, you don't really have it. A good astrologer would take notes of when the prediction failed. Well, I predicted this person would get married, they got married, and then they had a third aspect from so-and-so on their Mars. And so it must be that it doesn't work in this situation. Mm-hmm. They amass these notes. So it's like called patchwork or a patch-up solution. Mm-hmm. Now, actually, you're just wrongly emphasizing the basic thing, so you can have patches and band-aids all over the place when you try to, until you realize that my interpretation of the fundamental thing itself was silly. Right. So Mars in the 7th house, or contacting the 7th house, just means that they're going to be a independence from relationships. If you got Mars there in a terrible dignity, then you get a certain kind of a flavor to that. Like, okay, this person has bad karma with relationships. If you have Mars in the 7th house in Leo.
Yes. I mean, when I saw that in my chart, I kind of had a giggle because my image of the partner is always like someone like a soldier, would build things, would do things, has to be very proactive, active, mental engagement. If those things are not there, I just don't feel that pull just for the sake of marriage or the union,
Yeah. That's another important thing about Mangala Dosha. One of the common ameliorations for Mangala Dosha is to say, well, you have Mangala Dosha, marry somebody else who has Mangala Dosha. Then you'll have a good marriage. But if you marry somebody that doesn't have Mangala Dosha, that person will feel all clingy and dependent to you, and like they'll feel like a dead weight to you. Where if you marry somebody who also has Mars, has like independent style from relationships, then you'll get along. You'll both understand each other, and you'll give each other the space, and you won't get freaked out that this other person is doing things independently from you, because you'll be doing things independent from them. So like a soldier who spends a lot of time away from home, has a sense of adventure and bravery and all that good stuff. So, right, that kind of person would be the kind of person that would work in a relationship with you.
Mangala Dosha, wouldn't you said earlier that it seemed to be more devastating for a female? Just from sociological gender roles, it would be more acceptable for a male to have this than a woman, because you can be independent, go to work, where a woman's supposed to have that domestic.
Yeah, and then if a man acts like that, if a man acts all independent and everything, everybody just says, well, he's a man, of course, right? If a woman acts like that, then what's wrong with this woman? Doesn't she know that she's a woman? Right? And people can't get their heads around it. So it's definitely harder for a woman to have Mars. It's just harder in general for a woman to have prominent masculine planets, because most societies don't know how to process that and incorporate you into their social structure. It is difficult when women have masculine planets. It can also be difficult for men when they have a lot of feminine planets. It's for the same reason. But it's not as simplistic as the way that popular astrology gives it. Oh, you have Mangala Dosha, your marriage is going to be bad unless you marry somebody else with Mangala Dosha. You have to look at that Mars. What kind of Mars is this in the 7th house? How is it aspecting? How is it influencing the 7th house? That'll give you the clues.
And Mars in the 7th house is not a spouse killer, right?
Isn't that what?
A spouse killer. I've read that so much, that if someone has that, brings illness to to the spouse, or it kills the spouse. And
You see, this is like the other thing too about astrology. That kind of statement would be something that you should teach the astrology student. Mars in the seventh is a spouse killer, but it wouldn't be something that you would tell a layperson who doesn't understand symbolism. You know, Mars in the seventh symbolizes a spouse killer because Mars is injury, and the seventh is your spouse. So your spouse gets injured. So fine, it symbolizes. But lay people don't realize that symbols have to be combined. They just think, oh, I got this symbol and that's what it means. Like if they get a tarot card shuffle and they get a death card and they think, oh my God, I'm going to die. But it means something totally different how this death card interacts with the other cards or whatever. I don't know how tarot works. Like a person who's never had any lesson with painting but want to do a painting will probably go to the store, buy a couple of tubes of paint, buy a paintbrush, buy a canvas, go home, take out the paint, dip their brush in it, and start putting it on the canvas. They wouldn't think that I have to mix up these colors before I put it on the. If I mix up the colors, they're going to get all messed up, right? But you got to mix up the colors, otherwise it's going to look like you're a first grader or kindergartner. So, right, kindergarten approach to astrology is, oh my God, I have Mars in the seventh house, my spouse is going to die or kill me. Or I have Mars in the first house, I'm going to die. I'm going to fall from a ladder and die. I'm going to fall from the fourth story of a building. But that doesn't mean that Mars in the first house doesn't mean that you injury to your body. The symbol of Mars in the first house is you get injured. That's just the color that's in the tube. Now mix it with everything else. If you got a lot of other injury stuff in the rest of your colored paints, then you're going to come out with a color that's pretty close to what was in the tube.